This is Marvin Turner, student of Southern New Hampshire University, and I am about to deliver my persuasive speech that is titled, The Exploitation of the Disadvantaged. College athletes are considered employees and they should be paid accordingly. But how do we measure the value of these athletes? Does room and board, meals, and other expenses meet the player's value? Or does the athlete's talent and worth exceed that of a full scholarship? It is no secret that the NCAA, the National College Athletics Association, yields in billions of dollars each year. NCAA President Mark Emmert says that the NCAA is a non-profit organization. And with that being the case, they have to show accounts for the high revenue they generate each year. However, a nonprofit organization cannot show a profit of, let's say, $50 million. But think again. It does not take a scientist to know that the NCAA is profiting millions.
The NCAA is a voluntary association of around 1,100 colleges and universities.
And it's a nonprofit.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
And how much of your revenue comes from men's basketball?
90% of the revenue that flows into the NCAA comes from the media rights and ticket sales for the NCAA men's basketball tournament.
So how do these players end up in this billion-dollar cycle? Well, in my understanding of the recruiting process, players with exceptional skill set and size are recruited by top schools all across the United States. Some of these players are recruited from the time they arrive in high school. The player is offered a 4-year scholarship to any particular Division I school of his choosing. Once the player signs the letter of intent, the NCAA determines the funding disbursement for that player. The 4-year scholarship can be worth up to $100,000 when you add the expenses such as health care and other perks that is received by these players for being a professional athlete. But the scholarships are not fully guaranteed. Players have to reapply for scholarships each year for approval. I mean, really? Then shouldn't there be some kind of exemption for these athletes who in many cases are putting their health and well-being on the line for the NCAA? The players suffer further discredit by the NBA rules as they are asked to sign an agreement that he or she is prohibited from accepting any financial compensation from any kind of outside influence such as universities, other universities, or other agents, etc. Now tell me, does this sound like a form of child manipulation and extortion or what? And why is there no adequate representation on this matter from the Players Association? A study by the NCAA, the National College Players Association, which was titled The $6 Billion Heist, Robbing the Guise of Amateurism. The article explained the breakdown of money players would receive from 2011 to 2015. 2011 being a year when the $6 billion deal was signed by the NCAA with CBS and Turner Broadcasting.
And the current contract for March Madness with CBS and Turner Broadcasting is for how many years and how much money?
It's 14 years and it's $10.8 billion.
$10.8 billion.
It's about $700 million a year.
That's a lot of money.
It is, yes.
Again, the article shows what would happen if players started getting pay-for-play contracts after the NCAA deal was signed in 2011. Here's a piece from the article. The study shows that the average football and men's basketball players from BCS conferences would receive an average of over $714 to $1.3 million respectively, above and beyond the value of their full athletic scholarships over the 4 years between 2011 and 2015. Players on the top 10 revenue-generating basketball teams would each be denied over $3.5 million, including Louisville basketball players who will miss out on almost $6.5 million apiece. That's a lot of money. A lot of money that these players are missing out on. But what does it all mean? Well, the $714,000 and the $1.3 billion are numbers that would be paid to players from the top 10 BCS football conferences based on the revenue each school generated. $714,000 would be the average payout, and the $1.3 million would be the max payout to players in those schools. And here are the top 10 revenue-generating basketball teams. And that list consists of course, number 1, Louisville, number 2, Kansas, number 3, Kentucky, number 4, North Carolina, number 5, Indiana, and so on. These teams would receive anywhere from $3.5 to $6.5 million through a 4-year college course. That's a deal I'd sign up for right now. But let's say, for argument's sake, that the NCAA and the Players Association agree that each player is obligated to maintain a 3.0 GPA and cover their own scholarship funds and expenses. All as part of signing this $3.5 million contract over 4 years. Now, to me, this agreement would be so much better than what these players are receiving now. It would open up a whole new world from an educational, security, and stability standpoint for these players. Because let's face it, these players are not recruited because of what they can do in the classroom. They are recruited because they have a special skill set that is needed to build a winning sports program, ultimately making millions for the NCAA. Here's another important factor that would benefit these kids. Take college basketball, for instance. Players have to complete 1 year of college before they can enter the NBA draft. The number one reason these kids leave college after 1 year is what? Is money. Now, think about if a player had an opportunity to sign a 3.5 or anywhere from 3.5 to $6 million contract for a 4-year course. I would bet that most players would reconsider jumping to the NBA and stay in school and complete their degrees while getting paid to do so. Sounds like a win-win to me. Here's something else to ponder. If you go out to purchase an average house at a low price, you know this house has potential. So as you're looking at this house, you start to consider the potential and market value. You know that by investing in this asset, with a few upgrades here and there, coupled with the projected market value, you could gain huge profits in the end. The asset being the player in this case, yes. More than likely, the asset would generate a good revenue base for the school in a 4-year span. The NCAA will benefit from marketing these players by marketing their names, their images, using their names and images on videos and apparel, and so on. So that leads to the ultimate argument and debate. Should these athletes benefit from profits and revenues? Think about it. Events such as the NCAA March Madness tournament alone is one of the most profitable sports events in all America. Each college team has no more than 15 billion or 15 players on the roster. You mean to tell me that with this kind of money being generated, that these players are not worth more than an unsecured scholarship? I mean, the NCAA is bringing in $1 billion a year in revenue. Moreover, the NCAA is receiving money from multiple media outlets, sponsors, and other outside sources. So why is it a crime if the players accept gifts and other kinds of monetary compensation for themselves and their families? Why can't they do that? We go to an investigation that took place in 2006. This investigation took place regarding the University of Southern California star running back Reggie Bush. Bush was found to have accepted financial benefits from marketing agents who were pursuing Bush as their client. The University of Southern California received sanctions because of what took place between Bush and the agents. Bush himself lost his Heisman Trophy due to the investigation. In another high-profile investigation, quarterback Cam Newton of Auburn University. Cam's father was investigated also for negotiating and accepting money and gifts. In Cam's case, his dad, Cecil Newton, negotiated a deal with Mississippi State. He negotiated the deal. A deal that would have his son, Cam, play quarterback for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. He did this without Cam even knowing. Cam Newton instead signed with Auburn University, where he played his entire college career before being drafted to the NFL. Mississippi State, however, lost $120,000 and $180,000 that went to Cam Newton's father, Cecil Newton, and his associate, Kenny Rogers, in one of these pay-for-play deals. Which leads to the bigger question. Should these parents, or should the parents of these young college players be able to benefit from organizations that are recruiting their assets? Leads right back to the question. Does this seem like the exploitation of the disadvantaged? I mean, how can a multi-billion-dollar business, a business that gains millions in revenue and profits, but the players or the labor does not get paid? Something is very wrong with that picture. These questions have come up and have been debated in media outlets throughout the country, and rightfully so. This might be one of the more controversial arguments in sports media history. You know, not so long ago, I watched a Frontline documentary that was called Money and March Madness. The documentary gave us an inside look on how profitable the NCAA is and how they built this multi-billion-dollar industry. In the film, you were introduced to Sonny Vaccaro, who was an executive for Nike, Reebok, and Adidas. He was the advisor and creator of what has become, in the eyes of many, the manipulation and extortion of the young and misguided. Sonny is now coming out with his story on behalf of the college players, seeking to get justice for these athletes. But I question why. Why now? Why, after he profited millions for himself and millions for the NCAA, why does he want to come out and help now?
It's a business, and good for them. It's an unbelievable business.
Look at this pass.
Sonny Vaccaro is one of the people who made March Madness what it is today by bringing hundreds of millions in corporate endorsements to college sports. You made it possible, this commercialization, no?
Yes.
You're the guy who supplied the money.
Yeah.
But for decades, Vaccaro has been critical of the way the NCAA does business. He says that while many make millions, the people we tune in to watch, the players, get shortchanged.
I know that the kids aren't treated fairly. That's what I know is wrong.
Everybody's making money.
Everybody, except the kids.
Except the kids.
Except the kids.
Sonny Vaccaro also made a lot of money off those kids. He became known as the godfather of youth basketball because of his relationships with the best young players in the nation.
6 fouls and they're out.
Those players attended Vaccaro's summer camps and his all-star games, where they could showcase their skills for big-time college basketball coaches. In 1977, Vaccaro had a new idea, and he took it to a then little-known athletic shoe company called Nike.
I said, we ought to give the shoes away, and we ought to pay the college coaches. Put the shoes on the kids and the T-shirts on the kids, and the public will buy.
The documentary was revealing, to say the least. Now let's debate these issues a little further. I've listened to many arguments and points from those who are for college players getting paid and those that are against players receiving money for their services. I believe it is utterly ridiculous that these players do not get paid for their services in the first place. Is it just me? Or does this kind of treatment bear a resemblance to organized slavery? Think about it. Players are sought after because of their special skill set. The NCAA organization sends their coaches, their scouts, and their agents to recruit a player. The offer is cut and dry. They say to a player, you come and play for our organization, and you will be rewarded with free meals, a place to sleep, free education, free sneakers and apparel. They might even get a few nights out on the party scene. But even then, they are reminded not to compromise the articulated agreement with the school by getting in trouble with the law. Make no mistake about it. This kind of formal meeting is an actual job interview. And usually during the job interview, benefits as well as salary are discussed before any agreement is made between the interviewer, being the NCAA, and the interviewee, the player. Am I missing something here? Let's take into account that most of these kids are not recruited by these colleges, or most of the kids that are recruited by these colleges are from the inner cities of America. We know that 76% of the NBA players today are African Americans. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I can tell you that when I was growing up as a young 17, 18-year-old man, there was nothing more complimenting to me than to wear a pair of $200 sneakers matched with an authentic sports jersey. My point is this. At this age, the majority of these kids do not know the value of 6'6", 220 pounds of defined muscle. Can run a 40-yard dash in 4.4 seconds with the athletic and jumping ability of a cat. These kids are put in a vacuum, sent to a combine, and asked after giving 4 years of service in some cases, prove to us that what you can do, and you will be rewarded accordingly. Getting back to my point about organized slavery, a very interesting article written by Samuel H. Williamson called Measuring Slavery and $2,001. Samuel described the value of a slave as such, and I quote, "The monetary value can be measured by a transaction when something is bought and sold, or as an expected value of an asset currently held. Some assets have value because of the potential they can generate, or the potential income they can generate. Well, we know in this case, the players, or assets if you will, are the ones generating billions of profits for the NCAA. Samuel continued by explaining, and I quote, "Why would a slave have so much value? A short answer is that the value of a slave is the value of the expected output or services the slave can generate minus the cost of maintaining that person, such as food, clothing, shelter, etc. With me? Over his or her lifetime explained." Conversely, what Samuel is really saying here, the value of a slave is based on the expected output or services that slave can produce. But before we sum up what that value is, let's add revenue and profits that slave generated for his master as well. So if we minus the room and board and food, sneakers and the apparel, the cost would be substantially less versus what the revenue and profits would be, leaving large financial gains for the master. Sounds like a familiar process that the NCAA has implemented and benefiting from, by the way. But there are those that believe the contrary. While exploring the internet researching different points of views on this topic, I came across an article written by Josh Cooper of BDLSports.com. Josh opened the article with a very straightforward headline that read, "College athletes should not be paid." Here is the opening line to that article. Over the past few years, there have been debates on whether college athletes should be paid as if they were professional athletes. Now hear me out. He goes on to say, college athletes are guys that are trying to get to the pros and therefore are not paid because they have not made it yet. Because these players are in college, they should never be paid to play sports. Come on, Cooper. First off, let's get straight to the point here. The NCAA, just like the National Football League and the National Basketball Association, they are all billion-dollar businesses. Secondly, if a person is trying to get to a successful place in life, excuse me, doesn't that take learning, commitment, and effort? Let's say I start off as an intern working for the NCAA. That's me. I just got a job. I'm walking in the NCAA, and I said, hey, you know what? I have hopes of one day being the CEO. So they bring me in, I come in, I work every day, I'm learning, I'm committed, I come in on time, I do what I'm told, and I give a great effort as I do this. But am I supposed to work for benefits alone without a salary until I get a chance to get to the top? No one does that. Usually you come in at a salary and you work your way up. But I've never heard a situation where you have a job and you produce to help the company make millions and millions and millions of dollars and you don't get paid. You're down, you're doing the groundwork. Doesn't make much sense to me. Cooper went on in his article to say, there is a reason why it is called college sports. It is called college sports because the athletes that play in it are students and not professionals. Okay, he said they are students and not professionals. Students versus professionals. Well, the definition of a professional is of related to or connected with a profession. Well, we know in this case that the profession is the College Basketball Association, governed by the NCAA, which the players are strictly related to. Here's another case in point. Let's say people saw me play basketball on the street, and many of them thought I was a good basketball player. Every time they saw me, they referred to me as the good basketball player. However, if I was to make it to a Division I college and played organized basketball or football, I would be considered a semi-pro player, which means I would have a certain value that I did not have while I was on the street. To the average person, I would be considered and looked upon as a professional. That is because I would be marketed by the NCAA as a professional athlete. You can be marketed as a professional athlete, but you can't receive any benefits from being marketed. We're talking about the same NCAA that make billions because of students just like me, not professional students. Being considered a semi-pro player is very different than a student. Going to class and working on a major is one thing, but once the sneakers and the jersey goes on, that student has now transformed into a semi-pro athlete that has worth. An athlete that millions of viewers across the world will tune in to see perform at a very high level, as expected. How can we fix this issue? I believe it has to start by educating the parents of these athletes. Because when a child reaches a point where colleges are starting to recruit, they send scouts, the parents need to have some kind of training and guidance and resources that will allow them to make educated decisions regarding their assets. And here are some of the things, some of the mistakes that the parents make, because there's a whole lot of those. And number one is thinking they understand what is happening with the process. Parents do that all the time. They think they know better than everybody, when you have professionals at the school that have evaluated these kids. Number two is thinking they can evaluate their child's athletic talent. Now, in some cases, maybe, but to a certain extent, you can't. This is the one that kills me. And that is number three. They lose track of the importance of the college degree. Because a lot of times what these parents do is the first thing they think about is reaping the rewards of their child because of this skill set that he has. There's nothing wrong with that, but education comes first. Education has to be first and foremost. College sports should come second. And number 4, they expect the high school coaches to guide the athletes through the recruiting process. These are problems that need to be fixed. Parents have to be taught to understand the business side of recruiting and handle every meeting with these colleges as a business meeting. Because it is their child that has the value. And it is that value that the NCAA and their business partners are looking to accrue profits from. And when you are dealing with a billion-dollar organization that has been operating a certain way for many years, while many have gotten rich and continue to get richer because of it, a case like this does not change overnight. These kids are working their butts off to entertain millions of people across the world, while media, networks, and sponsors, along with the NCAA, get rich because of it. Something has to change. We cannot allow these kids to continue being solicited and exploited in this way. Let's give hope to the disadvantaged by giving them a fair share of the profits. And in closing, I hope that this information has shed new light on this topic. It is a very important topic. And I hope that when it is all said and done, these college athletes and the Players Association will change the direction of these businesses for the betterment of all college athletes in the U.S. and around the world. Thank you.